Okay, so assuming you've got parts 1, 2, and 3 complete, we're ready to install Rails. So let's first open up a command prompt and cd to your dev directory. And here if we hit dir, you'll notice that we've got those other two directories. We can just leave those. They're not going to hurt anything. We don't really need them right now, but anyhow, we'll just leave them there. Let's see, what do we want to do first? We want to do, we want to install Rails. So we do gem install Rails, and we'll specify the version to be 4.0.0 like that. That'll ensure that these instructions work even if there's a new version of Rails that comes out. And the command that the arguments that we had previously, they really apply here. The no RI and the no RDoc. It makes quite a difference to skip the documentation when installing Rails, just in terms of time. So I'm going to hit enter here, and I'm going to pause the video, and then I'll start it up again once that's complete. So I'm just going to hit enter. We'll get started. Okay, so hopefully you saw something similar to this. Basically a whole bunch of gems installed. These are all gems that Rails requires. And we just scroll down, you can see them all here. Successfully, successfully, successfully. That's all good. Now, we're going to be creating a Rails project that uses the MySQL database, or it assumes that it's going to use the connector. The way that we need, and you'll recall that when we compiled it in the last video, that we had to specify an argument to tell it where the connector source code was. And what we need to do now is Rails uses something called bundler for managing the different gems that are required for a Rails project. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use a command here to make sure that when bundler installs the gems, that when it comes across the MySQL2 gem, that it's going to use that. Remember that command, and I'll write it out here, but that command that we used, it was a command argument that was sent to the compiler to tell it where the source code was for the connector. So the way we do that is we're going to type in bundler, or bundle, config, and we're going to say build.mysql2, and from there we're going to now specify the argument. So it's that --with -mysql-dir equals c:\\, and then we'll type in my. Maybe you want to add an s there to make sure when you hit tab you can find it. So you see what we did? We're running the bundle command, and what we're doing is we're creating a config option for the MySQL2 gem, and that option, or that argument, is the --with -mysql-dir equals c:\, mysql blah blah blah, right? So now when we hit enter, what that's done is it went and created a, actually I'll show you. I'll just launch up here. If I click on downloads, or sorry, maybe, oh yeah, up here, go back to my home directory, and if I click on .bundle, it created this .bundle directory or file, and I'll just open this up here with Sublime Text 2 just to show you. So it went, that command that we just ran, it created a file, a folder .bundle, or folder or directory .bundle, and in there a config file, and you can see here bundle build mysql2, and you can see where it's got that option now. So I'm going to close that and close Sublime Text 2. We'll be coming back to that. But anyway, that's what that command did. And it's done on a global scale, so that no matter what now, when you go to create a new Rails application, it'll always know that it has to go and reference that connector code, okay, when compiling MySQL. So from that now we can do Rails, new, and we'll call the application hello underscore world, and we want to specify that we're going to be using MySQL, just like that, and hit enter. And that MySQL I'll show you here when we start it up. It'll show that it's, or it'll specify that we want to use MySQL for this project. And you can see here it's running bundle install. And if you're not familiar with Rails, there's a gem file that is where you specify all the gems required for your project. And bundle install will go read that file to figure out what gems should be installed. So it looks like everything you can see here using MySQL 2, that was actually, because we already compiled it, I wonder if maybe what I should do is just uninstall that just to make sure that this works, because that's what's happening here, is that it's actually using it. You can see how it says installing for some of the gems, and it's actually saying here that it's using MySQL 2, and what it's doing is, you'll remember from the previous video that we actually installed the MySQL 2 gem. I want to test that we can actually do the install from using bundler. So I'm going to do gem uninstall MySQL 2. And so it says successfully uninstalled MySQL 2, and I'm actually going to remove this hello world directory. So let's go back here, just bear with me. I'll just delete that. Okay, let's try this again now. So you see how there's no hello world. So, okay, let's do Rails new hello underscore world and -d for MySQL. Okay, and again, that's just telling us that it's going to generate a project that's configured to use MySQL. So let's hit enter. And now it's running the bundle install. And instead of saying using MySQL 2, it should actually say installing MySQL 2. And that's what's going to verify for us that bundler can install the MySQL 2 gem. And you remember, it does that based on that bundle config command. So see here, this is good news. It says installing MySQL 2 0313. So that's fantastic. That's exactly what we want to see. If we hit dir, there's the hello world, let's cd into it, and there's the Rails, the root of the Rails application. So I'm going to start up, let's start up Sublime again. And I'm going to go to project, add folder to project. Under dev, we've got hello world. Okay, and so this is the base of a Rails application. There's a couple things that we need to do, and one is set up the database. There is what's called a rake command to create the database. There's rake db create. But what I'm going to do here is actually let's actually do it just manually. We'll do mysql --user root -p, and I'll enter my password in. I'll try that again. Okay. From here, we'll do create database hello underscore world underscore development, and with a semicolon to finish the command, hit enter. You might say, well, John, how did you know to create that database? Well, in the config database.yml, we're going to be using this development section here for the config. We're using, by default, Rails defaults to using a development environment. And you can see that it generated this configuration file and it expects the database to be hello world underscore development. And while we're here, the thing that we also need to add is not only is the username root, but we also need to enter in the password. In my case, because when I installed MySQL, I used the root password as password1. So if you use that, that's what you want. Otherwise, use the password that you chose. And then we'll do, in Sublime Text, just a Control S to save it. And let's go back to the command prompt. Okay, and we'll exit out of the MySQL console. So from here, you know, this this video series isn't really going to go much into Rails itself, but this Hello World app sort of demonstrates that Rails can be installed and is working. So one of the things that we're going to do is generate some scaffold, and we'll do Rails G, and scaffolding will, well, you'll if you're not familiar with it, you'll see what it does here. We're going to generate some scaffolding for a user, and the user will have a first name, and it'll be a string, and let's do a last name as a string as well, and one more, we'll do email as a string, and we'll hit enter. And if we've done everything correctly, that's going to go and generate a whole bunch of files here, including a database migration. You can see what it's all done there. We'll go over to the database migrate here and show you what it did. Okay, so in Rails there's these migration files that you use to manage your migrations or your changes to your database. And you can see that it's creating a table, users, first name, last name, email, right? Just like we did in the command here. Okay, so after you run that command, we need to run the migration. We need to run that code, and the way you do that is rake db migrate. Okay, so you hit enter, and if we've got the connector installed properly, it'll go create that table, and sure enough it did. See that? So now we're ready to start the Rails server. So we just do Rails S, and you can see here that it started up the server. So let's go to our browser and type in http://localhost 3000. Let's just do that one first, and you can see that okay, we've got Rails is up and running. You can take a look at the some of this information about the environment. And if you add /users, this here is the scaffolding that we're talking about. It went and generated, and I'll show you actually maybe in Sublime here. In the views here, you know, it generated some controllers, like this user's controller, and here's the user's view code. So back to the browser. So you should see this. We can click new user. I'll just put in my name and create the user, and we go back and we've got a listing of the user. So that's if you can do that, you've gotten Rails installed. Congratulations. It's a little bit tricky on Windows. Yeah, I hope you found this series helpful, and I look forward to getting some feedback.